My name is Hannah Carter. I'm 35 years old, and right now, every phone in my grandmother's backyard is buzzing at the exact same moment because my mother just dropped a message into our family group chat. Every aunt, uncle, and cousin, 48 relatives in all, has received a single attachment, a bill, $347,000. The subject line reads, "The cost of raising a failure." Today is Mother's Day. The whole family turns to stare at me. They're waiting for me to cry, to apologize, to fall apart. But here's what none of them know. The woman who just billed me for raising me from birth didn't actually raise me for the first 7 years of my life. My grandmother did. I don't argue. I don't cry. Instead, I pick up my phone and send one thing to the group chat, a single photograph. By the next morning, 47 family members have blocked my mother. The 48th is my grandmother. She doesn't block her. She does something far worse. Welcome to my channel. Before I tell you the rest, if this story grabs your attention, be sure to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear more, and let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Mother's Day mornings in Savannah start early. By 7 a.m., the magnolia trees lining Abercorn Street were already bursting with blooms. And by the time I loaded my car with a 3-tier lemon pound cake and a cooler full of fresh strawberry compote, the humid Georgia air felt thick enough to chew. I'm a baker. I own Carter's Bakery. We have 2 storefronts now, along with a catering division that keeps me busier than I'd ever imagined. I never planned on this career. I was 2 years into a teaching degree at Georgia Southern when Grandma Evelyn suffered her first stroke. Someone had to step in. My mother certainly wasn't volunteering. She'd only reappeared in my life when I was 7, after marrying Richard Bennett and having my half-sister, Emma. Even then, her attention belonged to her new family, not the one she'd left behind. Emma was 13 when Grandma Evelyn had her stroke, so I left college, moved back to Savannah, and spent the next year dividing every day between Grandma Evelyn's bedside and a commercial kitchen I rented for $400 a month. The bakery wasn't born from ambition. It was born from necessity. None of that matters to my family. To them, I'm simply the one who dropped out of college. My mother, Linda Bennett, has a very particular way of introducing her daughters at every family gathering. Emma always comes first. "This is my baby. She's 27 and getting married this fall to a wonderful attorney." Then she gestures toward me. "And Hannah, well, she makes cakes." She says cakes the same way someone might say crafts when talking about a preschool art project. I've catered weddings with more than 300 guests. I employ 11 full-time staff members. Last year, my business generated more revenue than my mother's real estate office. But in Linda's version of the family story, I'm still the college dropout who plays with frosting. That afternoon, I pulled into Grandma Evelyn's driveway carrying a cake I'd been awake since 4 o'clock that morning decorating. What I didn't know was that my mother had a message sitting in her purse, a message she'd drafted nearly 3 weeks earlier. Grandma Evelyn Carter's house sits at the end of a dirt and gravel road in Thunderbolt, just outside Savannah. It's a cozy 1940s cottage with a screened porch wrapping around 3 sides, a ceiling fan that clicks every fourth rotation, and an ancient magnolia tree in the front yard that's leaned to one side for as long as I can remember. It's the only place where I've ever truly felt safe. Grandma Evelyn met me at the screen door. She's 81 years old, barely 5'2", and her hands are still steady enough to thread the smallest sewing needle. She wrapped me in a hug that smelled like lavender powder and sweet tea. "Let me see that cake, sweetheart." She held it out at arm's length, turned it slowly once, then smiled with approval. "You've outdone yourself again." Then she asked about the catering contract I'd landed the month before. It was a corporate event for one of Savannah's largest hospitality companies. She asked real business questions: revenue, staffing, timelines. Grandma Evelyn spent her entire career as a bookkeeper, and she respects numbers the way some people respect scripture. She's the only person in my family who treats my business like a real business, inside. The house was already packed. My Aunt Carol, Linda's younger sister, was arranging deviled eggs onto a serving platter. Uncle Ray was outside on the back deck wrestling with the grill. Cousins, second cousins, great aunts, the usual Carter family Mother's Day gathering. Then I heard my mother's voice carrying out from the kitchen. She was talking to Aunt Carol loudly enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. "I've been paying for Richard all by myself for years. Nobody helps me. Nobody." I stopped in my tracks, because none of that was true. Grandma Evelyn, standing right behind me, gently squeezed my hand through the dish towel she was carrying. She knew it wasn't true, too. Here's the thing about a lie that's repeated often enough. Eventually, it stops sounding like a lie. For weeks leading up to Mother's Day, my mother had been working the family phone tree. A little comment here, a dramatic sigh there. Hannah never comes around anymore. Hannah hasn't contributed a penny toward Emma's wedding. I sacrificed everything for my children. And look what I get in return. By the time everyone gathered at Grandma Evelyn's house, the verdict had already been decided. I could see it in the way people looked at me. Their eyes lingered just a little too long. Their smiles never quite reached their faces. My cousin Ethan, 24, tried to sound playful. "So, Hannah, when are you finally going to hook the family up with some free cakes?" He laughed. A few others laughed along with him. It was one of those jokes that isn't really a joke. Emma, my half-sister, lightly touched my arm. "Don't take it personally. Hannah, he's just teasing." Emma usually means well. She's 27, engaged to a corporate attorney named Ryan, and she's spent her entire life being the easy child, the daughter who stayed in school, followed the plan, never gave Linda a reason to be disappointed. She has no idea what it's like to be the other daughter. I carried my cake over to the potluck table on the back deck. Glass pitchers of sweet tea were dripping with condensation in the Georgia heat. Paper plates were stacked beside bowls of potato salad. Citronella candles burned near the railing. A portable speaker quietly played gospel music. Cicadas screamed from every live oak surrounding the yard. Then every phone at the gathering buzzed at exactly the same time. Mine vibrated in my back pocket. So did Aunt Carol's. So did Uncle Ray's. So did every cousin sitting at the kids' table. 48 phones, one notification. I pulled mine out, Whitfield family group chat. Sender, Mom. At the very top of the message was a single word: invoice. My mother calmly set down her glass of sweet tea, smiled at everyone around the table, and said, "Everyone, check your phones for me." I opened the attachment. It had been formatted to look exactly like a professional invoice. Every charge was neatly itemized and numbered beneath a custom-designed letterhead she must have spent hours creating. At the top, it read, "Linda Bennett, Statement of Account." Directly beneath that, in bold letters, was my name. Then came the itemized charges: prenatal care and delivery, $9,000, infant and toddler care, ages 0 through 3, $22,000, childhood expenses, ages 4 through 7, $38,000, school years, ages 8 through 18, $96,000, years I sacrificed for you, $90,000, college fund you threw away, $40,000, emotional labor, 35 years, $52,000, total, $347,000. At the bottom, in bold red text, it read, "Pay this balance, or admit to this family what you've always been, a failure I raised at a loss." I read it twice. The numbers were ridiculous, inflated, made up, pulled out of thin air, but accuracy wasn't the point. The audience didn't care whether the numbers were true. They cared about the performance, and my mother had just given them one. Around the table, everyone was scrolling through the invoice on their phones. Some slowly shook their heads. A few looked at me with pity. Others wouldn't meet my eyes at all. Across from me, my mother sat with her ankles crossed and her chin held high. She looked like a woman who had just delivered the closing argument in a courtroom. Then my eyes landed on one line again. Ages 0 through 3, $22,000. Ages 4 through 7, $38,000. She had billed me for years she wasn't even there. She charged me for diapers she never changed, for bottles she never warmed, for sleepless nights she never stayed awake through. Those were Grandma Evelyn's years. And now Linda had claimed them as if they were hers. I quietly turned my phone face down on the table. The cicadas never stopped singing. The ceiling fan on the porch kept clicking every fourth rotation. But something in the air had changed. It felt heavier, tighter, like those long moments before a summer storm rolls in from the Georgia coast. I started doing the math in my head the same way I calculate inventory when a supplier comes up short. If I stayed silent, all 48 people sitting here would leave believing I was an ungrateful daughter. They'd believe I took everything and never gave anything back. They'd believe I wasted my mother's sacrifices when I dropped out of college, even though I left school to care for Grandma Evelyn, because no one else would. Whatever reputation I still had in this family would disappear completely. And my daughter, Chloe, only 4 years old and asleep in her car seat, out in the driveway while my husband, Ethan, planned to carry her inside after her nap. She'd grow up hearing that her mother had always been the burden of the family. But if I fought back the wrong way, if I screamed, if I cried, if I stood there calling Linda a liar in front of everyone, then I'd become exactly what she wanted me to be. The emotional daughter, the ungrateful child who couldn't even accept the truth on Mother's Day. She won either way. That was the entire design. She chose Mother's Day because who argues with their mother on Mother's Day? She sent that invoice to 48 relatives because a crowd becomes a jury. and she'd already spent weeks coaching every witness before the trial even began. My Aunt Carol leaned toward me. "Honey, do you want to say something?" I looked at her, then at my mother, then back down at the invoice, ages 0 through 7. She had just billed me $60,000 for parenting she never did. And somewhere inside my phone, buried in a folder I hadn't opened in months, was a photograph that could prove it. Under the table. I felt someone's hand gently wrap around mine. Grandma Evelyn. She didn't say a single word. She simply held on, firm, dry, steady. The very same hand that had guided me across this yard when I was 3 years old. She knew exactly what that invoice said. She also knew what those first 7 years of my life had really looked like, because she had lived every one of them. She was there. She was the only one who was there. I squeezed her hand back, and in that moment, I made my decision. I wasn't going to stand there explaining my childhood to a table full of people who had already decided what they believed. I wasn't going to list every night Grandma Evelyn rocked me to sleep, or every morning she braided my hair before taking me to Head Start, or the summer she taught me how to read using the labels on canned food because she couldn't afford picture books. No. When you tell people a story, they have room to doubt it. When you show them, they don't. I had exactly one photograph, and I knew precisely which one it was. It had been taken right here on this porch, on Mother's Day, 33 years earlier. I was 2 years old, sitting on Grandma Evelyn's hip, both of us squinting into the bright sunlight. Behind us stood the same magnolia tree, only 20 feet shorter than it is today. And in that picture, there was no Linda. She was gone. She'd already been gone for more than a year. Grandma Evelyn was holding me the way only a mother holds her child when there's no one else willing to do it. I kept my voice calm. "Mom, your invoice says you raised me from birth." Linda lifted her chin another inch. "That's right. Including ages 0 through 7? Every single day." I slowly nodded. "All right." I unlocked my phone, opened my photo gallery, scrolled down to a folder labeled Grandma Evelyn, and I knew she had just billed me for years she wasn't even there. Linda spoke before I could. "Well, Hannah, you've read it." Her voice carried across the backyard as though she were presiding over a board meeting. Confident, polished, completely rehearsed. "I have," I replied. "So have the other 47 people here." "Good. Then they deserve to hear the truth." "Which truth, Mom?" Her eyes narrowed. "That I raised you? That I sacrificed everything for you? That I got nothing in return?" "From birth?" I asked. "From birth." "You're certain?" There was a pause, barely half a second. Her smile never disappeared, but her fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair. Uncle Ray, now 73, sat in a lawn chair beside the grill. He quietly cleared his throat. He didn't speak immediately. He simply tilted his head the way older men do when something doesn't quite add up. Linda noticed. She turned toward him almost instantly. "Ray, you remember. I was there every day." Uncle Ray rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Linda, I remember Evelyn having that little girl an awful lot." "Temporarily," Linda answered quickly. "While I was working." "Working where?" Ray asked. The entire backyard fell silent. Somewhere up in the magnolia tree, a mockingbird began singing. The porch fan clicked again. Linda straightened her back. I don't have to justify myself to you, Ray. Then she looked around at everyone gathered there. I don't have to justify myself to any of you. I'm the one who raised both of my daughters. I'm the one who went without so they could have everything. My Aunt Carol, who had been watching the entire exchange with her fork frozen halfway to her mouth, slowly lowered her plate. Linda, she has a point. Where exactly were you during those first few years? Linda's jaw tightened. I was getting my life together, she said. That's what mothers do. They rebuild. And who was taking care of Hannah while you were rebuilding? Uncle Ray asked. That was when Grandma Evelyn quietly set her fork on the table. I could feel the atmosphere changing. Not physically, emotionally. The people who had been nodding along with Linda just 5 minutes earlier were now looking back and forth between her and Uncle Ray, then between her and Grandma Evelyn. The numbers weren't adding up anymore. I kept my voice calm. Mom, your invoice charges $22,000 for infant care. That's right. And another $38,000 for raising me from ages 4 through 7. I raised you. Hannah. What address were we living at when I was 3? Silence. Linda blinked. We moved around. No, we didn't. I shook my head. I lived here. In this house. With Grandma. That was temporary? I already explained that. 3 years is temporary? I was working. Hannah, I was building a career so I could give you a better future. Her voice jumped half an octave. I recognized that tone immediately. It was the same voice she used whenever one of her real estate deals started falling apart, and she needed the buyer to stop asking uncomfortable questions. Around the yard, phone screens were still glowing. People were rereading the invoice, but now they were reading it differently. My cousin Ethan slowly lowered his phone. Aunt Carol's lips pressed into a thin line. I still wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't accusing Linda of lying. I was simply asking for dates, addresses, facts. And none of those facts matched what she'd written on that invoice. My cousin Ethan, the same one who joked about free cakes less than an hour earlier, leaned toward his mother and whispered something I couldn't hear. Carol gave a small nod before turning back to Linda. Linda, she's asking fair questions. Linda's nostrils flared. So you're all taking her side now, after everything I've done? No one answered. The cicadas filled the silence. I still hadn't shown anyone the photograph. I wanted to see how much farther she'd go. Linda responded the way she always did whenever she felt control slipping away. She stood. She shoved her chair backward, planted both hands flat on the table, and addressed everyone like a preacher delivering the final sermon. Let me make something perfectly clear. I carried that girl for 9 months. I gave birth to her. I came back for her. I enrolled her in school. I drove her to every activity, every doctor's appointment, You enrolled me in 3rd grade. I interrupted quietly. I was 8. Silence settled over the yard again. Because if she'd enrolled me in 3rd grade, that meant someone else had enrolled me in kindergarten, and 1st grade, and 2nd grade. Everyone sitting around that table had gone through the school system. They all understood exactly what that timeline meant. Linda's voice sharpened. You're twisting everything. I'm not twisting anything. I'm naming a grade. Emma, sitting beside her mother, looked at Linda with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, confusion. Mom, You always told me you raised Hannah by yourself from the very beginning. I did. Then, who enrolled her in kindergarten? Linda immediately turned toward her. Sweetheart, this isn't your concern. It's a simple question. The backyard suddenly felt much smaller. The potluck table covered with casseroles, cornbread, baked beans, and the lemon pound cake I'd gotten up at 4 a.m. to make, now felt like the judge's bench in a courtroom. Grandma Evelyn slowly stood. Not quickly. She's 81 years old now, and her knees aren't what they used to be. But when Grandma Evelyn Carter stands, people notice. She didn't say a word. She simply walked through the screen door into the house. We all heard the old spring squeak before the door slapped shut behind her. About 30 seconds later, she came back outside. In her hands was a worn shoebox. The corners were bent. A faded rubber band held the lid in place. She carefully set it in the middle of the table between the pitcher of sweet tea and the deviled eggs. No one reached for it. The shoebox sat there, like a witness waiting to testify. Every pair of eyes followed it. Grandma Evelyn remained standing behind her chair, one hand resting lightly on the backrest. This box, she said quietly, has been sitting in my closet for over 30 years. Inside are photographs, letters, and every receipt I saved from the day Hannah was born until the day Linda came back to take her. The color drained from Linda's face beneath her makeup. Mom, please don't. Hush. Grandma Evelyn never raised her voice. She didn't have to. When she said hush, it didn't sound like a request, it sounded like a final ruling. I spent 40 years working as a bookkeeper, she continued. Keeping records is what I do. I don't throw them away. She looked over at me. Hannah, do you want me to open it? I slowly shook my head. Not yet, Grandma. Let me handle this first. She gave one quiet nod and sat back down. But the shoebox remained exactly where she'd placed it, still sealed with that old rubber band, right beside the pitcher of sweet tea. I watched Linda stare at it. She knew what was inside. She had to. She'd been there when many of those papers were written, and records kept by a woman who spent 4 decades balancing ledgers don't lie. They don't exaggerate. They don't inflate numbers. They don't add emotional interest. They simply wait, quietly, precisely, inside an old shoebox, until someone finally needs them. Emma leaned toward her mother and whispered something. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the tone. For the first time in my life, Emma sounded like she was questioning our mother instead of agreeing with her. The shoebox hadn't even been opened yet, and it had already changed the entire atmosphere. I glanced back down at my phone. The family group chat was exploding with new notifications. Relatives who weren't at the cookout, cousins in Atlanta, an aunt in Jacksonville, Grandma Evelyn's brother's children up in Macon. They were all responding. Most of the messages were simple question marks. Several asked, Linda, what is this? One message from an elderly great-uncle simply read, This seems excessive. My mother had sent that invoice to 48 people because she wanted a jury. She wanted the full weight of the Carter family pressing down on me until I finally broke, until I apologized. But she had overlooked one very important thing. A group chat doesn't only work in one direction. Once you open that door, everyone gets to walk through it, and not everyone walks in on your side. I quietly took inventory. Out of those 48 relatives, at least a dozen were old enough to remember the years Grandma Evelyn raised me. Uncle Ray remembered. Aunt Carol remembered pieces of it. Grandma Evelyn's older brother, Harold, now 79 and living in Macon, he remembered. These weren't strangers. These were people who had visited this very house more than 30 years ago. People who'd seen a baby sitting on Grandma Evelyn's hip while Linda was nowhere to be found. They simply hadn't talked about those years. Because families rarely talk about the things that matter most, instead, they talk about potato salad recipes. Who forgot the ice? Who's bringing the folding chairs next year? Linda mistook silence for agreement. She was wrong. Silence only meant no one had been given a reason to speak. Until today. Emma looked down at her phone again as more messages appeared. "Mom," she spoke softly. "People are asking questions." "Let them ask," Linda answered, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. I heard it. So did Grandma Evelyn. I still wasn't ready to send the photograph, not yet. I needed Linda to go just a little farther, because every sentence she spoke now was another statement she could never take back. The afternoon heat continued to build. It was nearly 5:30 p.m. on the Georgia coast. The sun still hung high enough to pour through the porch screens, stretching long shadows across the table. The citronella candles had begun melting into little pools of wax. Behind us, the grill popped and hissed where Uncle Ray had forgotten to close the lid. This is where I need to slow the story down, because what happened next didn't happen all at once. It happened the way family confrontations always seem to happen. Slowly, painfully. Every second stretched on forever while everyone watched, and no one blinked. Linda stood again. She tapped the side of her glass with a spoon, the same little gesture she always used at church luncheons whenever she wanted everyone's attention. "I want to say something," she announced, "to everyone here and to everyone in the family chat." The backyard fell silent. Even the cicadas seemed quieter. My daughter Hannah has had every opportunity I could possibly give her. I paid for her birth. I paid for her childhood. I even helped with college before she decided to quit. And what have I gotten in return? Nothing. Not $1. Not one thank you. Most holidays, she doesn't even bother to visit. She paused, letting the silence do its work. So today, on Mother's Day, in front of all of you, I'm asking her to either make things right or finally admit what she really is. My cousin Ethan already had his phone out recording. 2 other cousins followed his lead. Linda pointed directly at me. "Hannah, stand up." I stayed exactly where I was. "Say it," she demanded. "Say, 'Thank you, Mom, for everything you sacrificed.'" I looked straight at her. "No." The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. "No. No. Because your invoice is a lie. And you know it." Linda didn't flinch. Instead, she turned back toward the rest of the family like an attorney addressing a jury. "You all see this. 35 years. And she can't even say thank you. This is what I've dealt with. A daughter who dropped out of college, opened a little bakery, and acts like the world owes her something." A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. Others, the ones she'd been quietly influencing for weeks, still nodded along. One of my mother's younger cousins, Patricia, spoke from the far end of the table. "Hannah, It's Mother's Day. Just tell your mother you're grateful. I am grateful, I answered. To the woman who actually raised me. Linda's smile twitched. I raised you. Mom, I kept my voice calm. You sent a $347,000 bill to 48 people. You called me a failure on Mother's Day. In front of my grandmother, the woman who actually... Don't. You dare. For the first time all afternoon, Linda's voice cracked. Not because she was emotional, because she was losing control. Don't sit there pretending I wasn't your mother. I'm not pretending anything. I'm asking you to tell the truth about the timeline. I was there, she shouted it. The sound echoed across the yard. A toddler sitting at the children's table burst into tears. Emma gently placed a hand on her mother's arm. Mom, please sit down. Linda shook her off, her eyes filled with tears. Her lower lip trembled. And for just a brief moment, I saw something underneath the performance. Something frightened. Something deeply human, something desperate. She needed this story to be true. She'd been telling it for over 30 years. If it fell apart, what would she have left? I could have destroyed her right then. I could have stood up and recited every address, every year. Every night Grandma Evelyn stayed awake with me while Linda was building a brand new life 3 states away. I could have told everyone how I'd spent the last 6 years quietly sending Grandma Evelyn money every month for roof repairs, for physical therapy after her second stroke, for a new water heater, because I was taking care of the woman who had once taken care of me. But that's not how you win a fight like this. You don't beat someone who's rehearsed their version of the truth for 30 years by talking louder. You beat them by showing something they can't explain away. Mom, I said quietly, you billed me for ages 0 through 7. I raised you. Then you'll recognize what I'm about to show everyone. I picked up my phone, opened my photo gallery, scrolled to Grandma Evelyn's folder, and found the picture. It was an old Polaroid that I'd scanned years ago. The colors had faded into that warm amber tint old Polaroids always get. In the photograph, a woman stood on this very porch, the same screened walls, the same magnolia tree, the same warped wooden floorboards. She was holding a baby on her hip. The baby wore a tiny yellow romper. The woman smiled. There was flour dusted across the front of her apron. The woman was Grandma Evelyn. The baby was me, written neatly across the white border at the bottom. In Grandma Evelyn's careful handwriting were the words, May 9th, 1993, Mother's Day. Linda wasn't in the picture. She wasn't anywhere in the house. She wasn't anywhere in my life that year. I looked at my mother. Then at the family group chat still open on my phone. Under the picture, I typed one sentence. Happy Mother's Day to the woman who actually raised me. My thumb hovered over the send button. I want you to understand something. None of this had been planned. I didn't come to Mother's Day carrying evidence. I didn't arrive expecting a confrontation. I came carrying a cake. I came because Grandma Evelyn asked me to. Because no matter what had happened over the years, whenever family called, I still showed up. But Linda had sent a bill. She'd called me a failure in front of 48 relatives. She'd charged me $60,000 for 7 years of parenting. She never did. And the only thing I'd ever had to challenge the story she'd built was one old photograph. So I pressed send. at exactly 5:47 p.m. on Mother's Day. The picture appeared in the family group chat. Every phone on that porch buzzed at once. Then the phones in Atlanta buzzed. The phones in Jacksonville, Macon, Hinesville, Augusta. 48 phones. One photograph, one caption. People looked down at their screens, then up at Linda, then over at Grandma Evelyn. She remained seated with her hands folded quietly on the table. She said nothing. She didn't react. Meanwhile, whispers spread across the backyard like wind moving through tall grass. Ethan slowly lowered his phone. Aunt Carol covered her mouth. Uncle Ray closed his eyes and slowly shook his head. The way someone does when a suspicion they've carried for decades is finally confirmed. Emma stared at the photograph. She zoomed in. She looked at the handwritten date. Then she looked at Grandma Evelyn. Then back at Linda. For the first time in my life, she didn't defend our mother. She quietly placed her phone face down on the table and said nothing. That was the moment everything changed. The first person to speak wasn't Linda. It was Uncle Ray. He wasn't looking at her. He was addressing the whole family. "I remember that porch," he said, pointing toward the picture on his phone. "I remember Evelyn standing right there holding that baby. Summer of '93. He looked toward Linda. "You'd already been gone since..." "What?" "Thanksgiving the year before." "Ray," Linda snapped, "I was living in Tallahassee." "You were in Tallahassee for nearly 2 years. Linda." Aunt Carol looked up from her phone. "Linda, you actually billed Hannah for years. Mama raised her? That photograph proves nothing." Linda's voice had become shrill. "It proves somebody is holding your baby," Uncle Ray answered quietly. "And it isn't you." A second cousin named Janice, sitting near the grill, turned toward Grandma Evelyn. "Miss Evelyn, is that true? Did Hannah live with you all those first years?" Grandma Evelyn carefully folded her napkin once, then again. 7 years, she answered simply. "From the day Linda left her in a bassinet on my front porch, until the day she came back and took her. Hannah was 7. She'd already lost her first baby tooth in my kitchen. That one detail, her first tooth, changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't about invoices anymore. It wasn't about money. It was about a grandmother pulling out a loose tooth, slipping a quarter beneath a pillow, braiding little pigtails before school pictures, making breakfast every morning, while her own daughter built a life somewhere else, without her child." Linda gripped the edge of the table. I came back. And I raised her from the time she was 8. That has to count for something." "No one said it doesn't," I replied softly. "But you don't get to bill me for the years you weren't there." Grandma Evelyn reached toward me. "My phone." I handed it over. She held it up so everyone could see. "I took this picture. Mother's Day, 1993. Hannah was 2 years old. I'd already been raising her since she was 4 months old." She lowered the phone. "I didn't raise her at a loss. I raised her because she was mine to raise. Because her mother left. And somebody had to." I watched Linda. She was gripping the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. "Mom, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Grandma Evelyn's voice never rose. It stayed perfectly level, steady as a carpenter's level resting on a beam. "For 30 years, I kept my mouth shut. Because you're my daughter. I believed one day you'd come back to yourself. I believed you'd eventually tell yourself the truth, even if you couldn't tell anyone else." She paused. The porch fan clicked overhead. "But today, you sent her a bill. You charged that girl $60,000 for the years I spent rocking her to sleep, teaching her the alphabet from soup can labels, walking her to the school bus every rainy morning." She looked at me. "I taught her to read. I taught her how to measure flour. I taught her to say please and thank you. And when she opened her bakery, I looked around that kitchen and thought, that's my kitchen. Those are the lessons she learned in my kitchen." My throat tightened. I didn't cry, not there. Not in front of 48 relatives. Not while my mother's carefully constructed story collapsed around her. But I wanted to, because Grandma Evelyn had shown me that kind of love my entire life. She'd proven it every single day. But until that afternoon, she had never once put it into words. Now she had, and everyone heard her. It was my cousin Ethan who finally cracked the silence. He'd been scrolling through the family group chat, reading messages from relatives who weren't at the cookout, when he slowly looked up with a puzzled expression. "Aunt Linda, why now? Why send this invoice today, right before Emma's wedding?" The question lingered in the heavy afternoon air. Linda didn't answer. Emma turned toward her. "Mom." Nothing. Her voice dropped another notch. "Mom, are we okay financially?" Linda pressed her lips together and stared out at the magnolia tree, as if it somehow owed her an explanation. "Because I saw the catering estimate," Emma continued, "and the venue deposit, and the florist. Mom, where is all that money coming from?" Aunt Carol slowly set her plate down. "Linda, you told me you already had Emma's wedding completely covered." "I do," Linda answered. "With what?" Uncle Ray asked. "Your commissions have been down ever since the housing market cooled. I know because my neighbor listed with your office and ended up pulling the house off the market." The mood in the backyard shifted again. Not into tension, into understanding. Everyone was doing the same math I'd already done months earlier. Linda hadn't sent me that invoice because she truly believed I owed her. She'd sent it because she needed money. The failure she'd raised at a loss was supposed to write a check large enough to pay for the wedding she couldn't actually afford. My half-sister looked at our mother the way someone stares at a GPS after realizing they've been driving in the wrong direction for hours. "You told me Hannah was selfish," Emma said quietly. "You told me she never gave anything back," Linda finally answered. "She hasn't." Emma looked at her in disbelief. "She paid for Grandma's roof and her physical therapy. Grandma told me last Christmas." I spoke before Linda could respond. "She billed me for years she wasn't even there." And the invoice was never really about the past. It was about Emma's wedding. I slowly stood, not dramatically, not angrily. I simply pushed my chair back the way people do when dinner is over and it's time to clear the table. "I didn't send that photograph to humiliate you. Mom." Linda refused to look at me. "I sent it because I'm done being called something I'm not. I'm not your failure, and I'm not your debtor. I left college because Grandma needed someone, and no one else stepped up." I paused. Through the screen door, I could see my daughter, Chloe. Ethan had carried her inside while she'd been sleeping. She was lying on a blanket in the living room with her thumb tucked into her mouth, completely unaware that her mother's entire family was falling apart barely 10 feet away. I looked back at Linda. "Don't ever call me a failure in front of my daughter." I didn't raise my voice. I only said it once, and I meant it for the rest of my life. Then I quietly sat back down and rested my hand on Grandma Evelyn's arm. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything you did, and for everything you're still doing." She gently patted my hand. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her jaw remained firm. She gave one small nod, the same satisfied nod she'd always made whenever the books balanced and every number finally came out right. Linda couldn't stop staring at the old shoebox. She knew what else was inside. She'd always known. "This is over," she said as she stood. "I'm leaving. That's your choice," I answered. She grabbed her purse. Emma didn't move. "Emma, let's go." "I'm staying," Emma replied. Linda blinked. "Excuse me." "I'm staying. I want to talk to Grandma." My mother walked off the porch alone. The sound of her heels echoed across the gravel driveway. A moment later, her car engine started. Then she was gone. The magnolia leaves barely stirred. Condensation continued sliding down the pitchers of sweet tea. No one reached for another glass. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan had tucked Chloe into bed. Now he sat beside me on the couch without saying a word. That's one of the things I love most about him. He always knows when simply being present is enough. I scrolled through the family group chat. The conversation had continued for hours. The old Polaroid remained pinned near the top of the thread like Exhibit A in a courtroom. Beneath it, message after message after message kept pouring in. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were sharing memories. Grandma Evelyn's older brother, Harold, now 79 and living in Macon, typed in all capital letters the way so many older relatives do. I remember Evelyn raising that baby. Linda was not there. This is the truth. Aunt Carol sent a voice message. I played it quietly. "Linda, I love you, but this was wrong. You know it was wrong." My cousin Janice, the one who'd been sitting near the grill, uploaded a photograph of her own. It was from a Carter family reunion in 1995. I looked about 4 years old. I was sitting happily on Grandma Evelyn's lap. Linda wasn't anywhere in the picture. By 10 o'clock that night, people started leaving the group chat. Not muting it, leaving it. Then, blocking Linda's number altogether. I never asked anyone to, I never encouraged it, but one by one, 47 members of the Carter family either left the conversation or blocked Linda completely. Ethan watched the member count with me. 44, he said. A few minutes later, 46. Then, just before midnight, 47. Only one person still hadn't blocked Linda. Grandma Evelyn. I sent her a text. "Grandma, are you okay?" She replied 3 minutes later. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm not blocking her. You don't have to." "I know, but I'm not finished yet." I stared at that message for a long time. "I'm not finished yet." At the time, I had no idea what she meant. By the next morning, I did. 47 people had blocked my mother. The 48th, Grandma Evelyn hadn't. What do you think she did instead? Did she forgive her? Or did she do something even more powerful? Leave your guess in the comments before I tell you. And if you're invested in this story, be sure to subscribe, because what Grandma Evelyn did the following afternoon, is something I'll never forget. It's the part that still keeps me awake some nights. The next day, Grandma Evelyn called a family gathering. Not through the group chat, she called everyone personally, one phone call at a time. The same way she'd organized family gatherings for more than 60 years. Come to the house. 3 o'clock. I have something I need everyone to see. I drove over with my daughter, Chloe, asleep in the back seat, and a knot sitting heavy in my stomach. My husband, Ethan, stayed home. This is family business, he told me. He was right. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch was already full again. Aunt Carol, Uncle Ray, Ethan, Janice. Harold, who had driven 3 hours from Macon, several other relatives. Emma was there too. She sat quietly on the porch swing with her arms folded, looking like she hadn't slept all night. Linda wasn't there. Grandma Evelyn sat at the head of the long table. Everything had been cleared away, except for one thing. The old shoebox. She looked smaller than she had the day before for just a moment. I wondered if all of this had simply become too much. The confrontation, the heat, the weight of what she was about to do. Then she looked up at me, and I saw it. That quiet steel behind her gentle eyes. The same expression she'd given me when I was 8 years old and came home crying after school. The look that always said, "We'll handle this." "I've kept this box for over 30 years, Grandma Evelyn began. Her voice was steady. "I kept it because I hoped I'd never need it. I kept it to protect my daughter." She carefully removed the faded rubber band from around the shoebox. "But yesterday, Linda stood in my yard on Mother's Day, and she called my granddaughter a failure. She charged Hannah for years of love that I gave freely." She looked around the porch. "So I'm done protecting her." She lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of old photographs, a small leather notebook, and one folded letter whose creases had turned yellow with age. Grandma Evelyn unfolded it with extraordinary care, as though it might fall apart in her hands. It was written in blue ballpoint pen on lined notebook paper, the inexpensive kind sold in packs at dollar stores. The handwriting was small, slanted, immediately recognizable. It was Linda's. Grandma Evelyn held it up. "This is the letter my daughter left on my kitchen table the night she brought Hannah to me. November 14th, 1990. She didn't read the entire letter aloud, only 3 lines. The first, 'Mom, I can't do this.' The second, 'She's too much. I'm not cut out for this.'" Then Grandma Evelyn paused. Her voice caught ever so slightly before she finished reading the third. "Please take her. I'll come back when I'm ready." Then she pointed toward the margins. One word appeared twice, written almost like an afterthought. Failure. The porch became absolutely silent. Not the polite silence of people waiting their turn to speak. The kind of silence that happens when dozens of people realize, all at once, that everything they've believed for 30 years has been backwards. Linda hadn't sacrificed for Hannah. She had walked away. She'd called her own baby a burden, in her own handwriting. Then she'd disappeared. Years later, she came back, rewrote the entire story, turned herself into the devoted mother, and transformed her daughter into the disappointment. Emma was trembling. She wasn't crying. She was simply shaking, barely above a whisper. She said, "She always told me she'd been there from the beginning." Grandma Evelyn's older brother, Harold, slowly removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Evelyn, we should have spoken up years ago. Yes, Grandma Evelyn answered quietly. We all should have. She placed the letter face up on the table, then set the shoebox lid beside it so the afternoon breeze wouldn't carry anything away. She had billed me for years she hadn't even been there. Now, her own handwriting proved it. But Grandma Evelyn wasn't finished. She reached back into the shoebox and removed the small leather notebook. It was a ledger, every page filled with neat columns, dates, amounts, names, everything written in the careful handwriting of someone who had balanced books for a living. For the last 9 years, she said, I've been lending Linda money. She asked me not to tell anyone. She opened the ledger to a page marked with a ribbon. $2,000 when she fell behind on her car payment. $5,000 after a real estate closing collapsed. $12,000 toward Emma's wedding venue. $800 here. $1,500 there. She quietly closed the notebook. I keep records. That's simply who I am. The total comes to $41,600. Aunt Carol covered her mouth. Uncle Ray let out a long breath. So, Carol whispered, when she kept telling everyone nobody ever helped her, she was being helped, Grandma Evelyn answered. By me. Every single time. And she never told any of you. Even I hadn't realized how much Grandma Evelyn had given her. I knew she'd helped from time to time. She'd mentioned it once or twice in passing. The same understated way she mentioned everything important, like a footnote in an audit. But over $41,000 from an 81-year-old widow living on a fixed retirement income. Grandma Evelyn slowly stood. It took her a moment. My cousin Ethan instinctively stepped forward to help. She gently waved him away. Then she looked toward the empty chair where Linda had sat the day before. Linda, if someone repeats these words to you, and I know they will, I want you to hear them exactly. She addressed the porch the way she might once have addressed a room full of accountants. Direct, calm, without drama. I'm done. No more money. No more covering for you. And until you tell the truth, the whole truth, to your daughters, to this family, and to yourself, you are no longer welcome in this house. That was all. No yelling, no insults, no tears, just a boundary drawn by an 81-year-old bookkeeper. In permanent ink. When Grandma Evelyn finished speaking, Emma slowly walked over to me. She stopped on the porch steps. Mascara streaked her cheeks. Her engagement ring caught the late afternoon sunlight. Hannah, I waited. I believed her. My entire life. I believed everything Mom ever told me. That you were selfish. That you walked away. That you never cared. She wiped at her face with the back of her hand. I'm so sorry. Emma's voice barely rose above a whisper. I hugged her. I hadn't planned to. It simply happened. The way it happens when someone you've spent years keeping at a distance finally stops pretending. She held on longer than I expected. I didn't know about the letter, she said into my shoulder. I didn't know she left you. I know. And all the money you've been sending, Grandma. The roof. The physical therapy. Everything. Mom always told me you never contributed to anything. I gave a tired smile. Mom told you a lot of things. Emma stepped back and looked me in the eyes. What do I do now? You figure out what's true, and then you move forward from there. I didn't pile on. I didn't list every wrong Linda had ever done. I didn't ask Emma to choose between us. I didn't post anything on social media. I didn't call relatives to make sure they'd heard the story correctly. I'd already said everything that needed saying. The photograph had spoken for itself. And the letter, the one written in Linda's own handwriting, had said everything else. On the drive home, Ethan glanced over at me. You okay? I watched the Spanish moss drift past outside the passenger window, in the back seat. Chloe quietly sang an old lullaby she'd learned from Grandma Evelyn. It was the same lullaby Grandma Evelyn used to sing to me when I was Chloe's age. I smiled. Yeah, I think I finally am. 2 weeks later. The fallout had settled into something measurable. Linda lost her position on the church hospitality committee, officially. She'd been asked to step back in a Southern Baptist church. Everyone knows exactly what that phrase really means. 3 real estate clients withdrew their listings. News travels through Savannah the way water seeps into a foundation, not quickly, but thoroughly. You don't notice the damage until one morning the cracks suddenly appear. Emma's large wedding was canceled. Not the marriage, just the production. She and Ryan quietly married at the courthouse instead. She wore a simple white sundress. Later, she told me it was the best decision she'd ever made. It turns out I didn't need 200 people watching me say I do. I just needed to mean it. Grandma Evelyn kept her word. She didn't call Linda. She didn't text her. And she never sent another dollar. Through Emma. I heard Linda had started counseling. Apparently, she spent 40 minutes crying during her second session. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. My own life didn't suddenly become extraordinary. The following Tuesday, I went right back to work and baked 600 biscuits for a corporate breakfast. That's what running a bakery really is. Not dramatic moments, just schedules, orders, early mornings. But something else did change. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years started calling. Even Ethan, the same cousin who'd joked about free cakes, showed up one afternoon and asked whether I was hiring. As it happened, I was. Then, in July, the Savannah Waterfront Association awarded my company the catering contract for the Fall Festival. 3 days, nearly 4,000 attendees. It had nothing to do with the family drama. They'd been watching my work for over a year, weeks later. I finally posted something online. Just one photograph, Grandma Evelyn, 81 years old, sitting at the counter in my bakery eating lemon pound cake. There was flour in her hair. The caption simply read, "The woman who raised me." Linda clicked the heart. She didn't leave a comment. She didn't send a message. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't nearly enough. But it was probably the most honest thing she'd done in over 30 years. That August, Grandma Evelyn invited me over for Sunday supper. Pot roast, her good china, fresh sweet tea. Halfway through dinner, she quietly said, "I didn't open that shoebox to hurt your mother. I opened it because she stood in my yard and called the result of my life's work a failure." She gently laid her spoon beside her plate. "I chose to raise you when I was 50 years old. My pension barely covered one person. I would make that same choice every single day. But I will never sit inside my own home and let someone send you a bill for my love." She looked at me. "You didn't destroy Linda. She did that herself. You simply stopped carrying her lie. We finished dinner with the screen door open. The scent of magnolias and freshly cut grass drifted through the house. Above us, the old ceiling fan clicked every fourth rotation. Thanksgiving arrived. Once again. We gathered at Grandma Evelyn's house. The table was set for 14 people, smaller than before, but everyone there had chosen to come. Through the kitchen window, I noticed Linda's car pull into the driveway. She remained behind the steering wheel for nearly a full minute before finally getting out. When she stepped inside, she looked at Grandma Evelyn. "Can I help?" Grandma Evelyn silently handed her a paring knife. "Carrots." A few minutes later, Linda noticed me. "Hannah, I'm glad you came." I said I would. She hesitated. "Your bakery and the festival contract. That's really something. Thank you, Mom." No hugs, no dramatic reconciliation, no tears. She was in therapy. She was trying. That was enough for one Thanksgiving. After dinner, I sat out on the porch with Chloe. I pulled up the old Polaroid on my phone. "You see that lady? That's your great-grandma Evelyn. And that little baby? That's Mommy." Chloe smiled. "She's holding you." "Yeah, sweetheart. She held me for a very long time. My mother once sent me a bill for $347,000 to prove I was a failure. I answered with one photograph. And somehow, the truth raised me all over again. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself within your own family, tell me about it in the comments. You'll find more stories in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.